Welcome to week 7. My name is Becky Rokel, and here's what my takeaway from the chapter. I'm only really going to talk about one, although there was a whole bunch, but the one takeaway that really stuck out from me was transition. I believe this stood out for me mainly because these are things that I try to work really hard at. I think I put a lot of attention on, but then when I actually say them out loud, they don't sound as smooth as they do in my head. A couple other takeaways I had though was from Reverend Manuel's talk. And I loved when she said to keep a speaker's journal and to track our talks. So I have these folders on my computer. So every time I build a talk, I build a PowerPoint and I take notes and have these different file folders for them for each place that I do it. So I had a record of it, but I went and built an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm so excited to be able to do this, right? The one thing I didn't have is the speaker's journal. So I'll start tracking that now and see how I felt about it and track if anybody made comments and so on, and just kind of get feedback to myself as I go along. What stuck, what didn't stick. I think there's ones that I've liked that I thought I delivered well, but I never went out of my way to ask people to look and to tell me what they thought about it either. The name of my talk is How Do We Bridge the Gaps Between the Seemingly Impossible Day-to-Day Tasks in Our Lives to living in infinite possibilities with Spirit. I remember from a very early age, if somebody told me that something was impossible, I was going to make darn well sure that I got the task done. I had 2 older brothers, and it was keep up or get out of the way. So I learned very early to keep up. I learned to do what they did. I learned to play baseball, football. I wanted to be involved in everything that they were in, and I wanted to be better than them. So there was this drive inside of me to surpass the impossible, but not to lean on God for it. Luke 18:27 says, from the New International Version, what is impossible for mortals is possible for God. Do you believe all things are possible in God? Now, the Bible is full of what seemed to be impossible tasks that became possible through God. We could start with Noah and the ark. Noah had to build it, and he had to get all the animals on it, and and the rain was coming, and him and his family had to survive on it with all these animals for all this time, and then start a new life because God said that he was in his favor. Moses and the Israelites is another one. Led out of bondage into the desert for a long time. Moses goes to get the 10 Commandments, comes back, the golden calf. We know the story, right? So there he's got to stay in the desert this whole time. Moses doesn't even live long enough to actually see them get to the promised land. That was Joshua, because the Israelites did make it to the promised land, only to find there were more seemingly impossible tasks. Think about the walls of Jericho. Joshua had to lead them to bring down the walls of Jericho. When you look at these tasks from the outside, you're thinking there's just no way. This is just a few of the ones that seemed impossible, but were possible through God. In 1996, my little brother was 3 years old, and we called him Scotty. His name was Michael Scott. He was having problems. He would faint when we were playing. We couldn't figure out what was going on. So after a series of doctor visits and a specialist at Salt Lake City Children's Hospital, we found out that Scotty had not only a misshapen heart, but he had a hole in the end of his heart. And instead of a natural 2 bumps, like bump, 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 his heart would actually skip a beat. Arrhythmia, they call it now, right? But in 1966, there was nothing that they could do for Scotty. What they told my parents was the impossible. You can put him in bed, and he might live till he's 11 or 12, and he'll eventually die of heart failure. Or you can let him be a kid and run around with his siblings, and he will die sooner, but he'll die a happy child. That must have been a heavy burden for my parents at the time. I remember I was about 8 years old, and I would go out, and we'd be playing, and Scotty would fall over, and I would have to pick him up and bring him in the house, carry him in the house, and I'd get a cold rag and I'd wet it down and wring it out, and I'd rub all over his face, all over his chest, the back of his neck, until he came to again. There was enough blood for him to actually, almost like he was waking up from a sleep. We were never sure how long Scotty would live. And when he was 14 years old, he went to the doctor because he decided he wanted to play on the water polo team. And my mother assured him that with his bad heart, with being misshaped and skipping beats, blood going actually into his body instead of through his veins, the doctor wouldn't let him play sports. Well, after a series of another specialist test, they found out there was no hole in Scotty's heart. And there was no missed beat. He beat all 4 beats. Boom, boom, boom. What is impossible becomes possible. How do we, as in our humanness, drop these limited ideas that we have on the possibility that can happen in our life? Eric Butterworth wrote something on possibility. I'd like to read it to you. He says, your possible dream says, look up, away from the swamp bogs of limitations. Look up and behold the greater possibility of life. Look up and let your mind reach to the heights. What you can conceive in mind and believe in faith, you can achieve in experience. And it's funny, I looked up the word faith in the revealing word, and it says this inside there: spiritual assurance, the power to do the seemingly impossible. So let's imagine for a moment that you went to sleep tonight, and tomorrow when you woke up, you had selective amnesia. Only part of your memory is gone, but the part that was gone was your limitation, the things that you thought you couldn't do, or someone had told you, or the labels somebody had placed on you that that's impossible. All of those were gone. How would you feel? How would you relate to others if there was nothing but infinite possibilities in front of you? This is what God promised in Luke 18:27. My husband and I have this little challenge that anytime someone brings a problem to the other, we play the what if game. What if fill in the blank? So what if it was possible? What if what lies ahead of us and what lies in us and through us is infinite possibility? We know that it is, right? What if just for today we accepted the world has got our back and what was ahead of us was nothing but infinite possibility? Butterworth goes on to say, dare to dream and to see your dreams as real and true. Dare to see yourself as successful, as healthy, as living a life overflowing entertainment of the dream. You will see it come forth in manifestation. It is not a miracle of becoming what you are not, but the awakening to the vision of what you have always been. Let me say that one more time. It is not a miracle of becoming something you are not, but the awakening to the vision of what you have always been. So I like the author Thomas Merton, and he said, you do not need to know precisely what is happening or exactly where it all is going. What you need to do is recognize the possibilities and challenges offered by the present moment and embrace them with courage, faith, and hope. Infinite possibility through God. You see, you choose, you decide, you become, we get to, as children of the Most High, step into this expansion of who we are and be in infinite possibility. By the way, Scotty, or as we refer to him now, Michael Scott, will celebrate his 58th birthday, April 29th. I'm happy to say. I have a mantra for us as we leave today. Here it is. This path I am walking is filled with possibilities. Every day, every moment, every breath, I am expanding into what is possible. Can you live with that? Let's take that as our mantra. What you take through each day thereafter is of your own choice, right? Because we get to choose. Let us live, let us be the bridge from the impossible to the possible with God as our source. Live from the limitless possibilities in your life. Namaste.